What do the following movies have in common? Jaws, Die Hard, Police Academy, Friday the 13th, Christmas in Evergreen. If you guessed too many sequels, you're right. Hi, I'm Jill Urbach, and today I'll be reviewing Hallmark Channel's Christmas movie, Christmas in Evergreen, Bells Are Ringing, the fourth movie in the Christmas in Evergreen series. If you like Hallmark Christmas movies, you're in the right place for Christmas movie reviews. Click the subscribe button and that notification bell and you'll get alerted the next time I post a video. If you've watched my other Hallmark Christmas movie reviews, you know that I discuss specific elements in the movies. I'm going to attempt to keep that format with this review, but this movie makes it kind of challenging, as you'll see. As I mentioned, Christmas in Evergreen, Bells Are Ringing is the fourth movie in the Christmas in Evergreen series, and I confess I have not seen any of the other Christmas in Evergreen movies, which I think makes me qualified to give an objective review of this fourth installment, Christmas in Evergreen, Bells Are Ringing. So I'm just gonna jump in and we'll see where it goes. Here's the synopsis for Christmas in Evergreen, Bells Are Ringing. As Michelle's wedding approaches, Hannah steps up to help finish the launch of the new Evergreen Museum while questioning her relationship and future with Elliot. Now, since this is the fourth movie in the Christmas in Evergreen series, they started off the movie with a storybook where they're going through the pages, kind of telling a story of what has happened before, basically just to catch you up on the other three movies. And part of me appreciated that since I had no idea what the other movies were about, but part of me really hated it because it felt really contrived and honestly I think it was kind of a cop-out. And then to drive the point home for those of us who haven't seen the other movies, the first 14 minutes of this movie were just so full of forced, frenetic Christmas energy just to drive home the point that this was a Christmas town. You know, the kind where everything is said with a really toothy grin. Even the family that had moved to Paris had come home to Evergreen for Christmas because apparently even the City of Lights can't compete with Evergreen at Christmas. Our main characters are Hannah, played by Rukiya Bernard, and Elliot, played by Antonio Cayonne. Now, there wasn't a meet cute in this movie because all the relationships have already been established. They all happened in the previous three Hallmark movies. But this one focuses primarily on the relationship between Hannah and Elliot. They're supposedly in this committed relationship, and I'm sure after the last movie we're supposed to think that they're in love forever, but I find it really interesting and annoying that they have these big decisions that they're making at the beginning of the movie, and they don't consult each other at all. They just determine everything on their own and then spring it on the other person. Which, if we were supposed to believe that they were truly committed, I would have thought that they would have involved each other in the processes of these big decisions. And of course, to cause conflict, the plans that they both decide on are totally conflicting. One wants to move away and one wants to become more rooted in the town. There's a sub-story with Michelle, played by Holly Robinson Peete, planning a Christmas wedding, and her fiance Thomas is stuck out of town. And we'll talk about that. Now, of course, I did keep track of the Hallmark Christmas movie elements on my Christmas movie checklist. You can click the link in the description below to download your own free copy. But let's go through this quickly and see how many traditional Hallmark Christmas movie elements made it into the movie. Snowy locale, this takes place in Evergreen, Vermont, so of course plenty of snow. Traditional Christmas activities, they picked out a Christmas tree, decorated the tree, baked Christmas cookies. Sleigh or carriage ride, no. Christmas shopping, wrapping presents, opening presents, no. They played in the snow with that forced sudden town snowball fight that came out of nowhere. That was weird. Family dinner, no putting lights on the house, but of course they enjoyed a cozy hot drink. Cooking, baking, no. Ice skating, no. And they made gingerbread houses. As far as community events, none of them from my list were in the movie. Although I have attending church here. They didn't attend church, but the choir practiced at the church, so we can give that one to them. And acceptable but not needed, hint of magic. There's something magical about that town, and maybe that shows up in the earlier movies, but in this one, every time it kind of started to snow, Hannah would pause and kind of give this look, but I couldn't tell if she was nervous over the snow or noticing something, or I don't know, it was kind of odd. And there were a couple other little moments where you kind of go, is this supposed to be magic? But all in all, for a movie that's supposed to take place in the ultimate Christmas town, we've had other Hallmark movies this year that checked off a whole lot more boxes than this one did. Usually I talk about my favorite secondary characters, but this movie deserves to divide that into two categories: my favorite secondary characters and the secondary characters that detracted from the movies. Let's start with my favorites. Ezra was played by Chris Cope, and I enjoyed this character. He was the quirky gay friend, and obviously he was a good friend of Hannah and Elliot's, and I suspect maybe he showed up in previous movies. Unfortunately, he was really only shown in one scene, and it seemed like his only purpose was to swoop in and spill the beans accidentally on something so that it could move the plot forward, and then he was gone. I also enjoyed Sonia, played by Marcy T. House. Sonia was Michelle's sister, and she comes to visit, and she's a little overwhelmed with Evergreen. She's not that into Christmas. And at one point early in the movie, Michelle and Sonia are at a coffee shop, and Michelle has a hot cocoa that already has marshmallows and chocolate sauce drizzled on it, and then she puts in a peppermint stick and stirs it, and claims it gives a festive peppermint kick. And the death stare that Sonia gives her is priceless. Someone in this movie had to be skeptical of all that holiday cheer. It was just so over the top, even for Hallmark. A good segue between my two secondary character categories are the Cooper twins. These twins were played by Jacqueline and Joyce Robbins, and they were these delightful old ladies, and my first notes on them were, I love the twins, but by 2/3 in the movie, I wrote, twins so annoying. A little bit goes a long way. No offense to the actresses, but when the whole movie you're getting shoved this cheer and quirkiness and cutesiness and more cheer, by 2/3 of the way in, I was kind of in a Hallmark diabetic coma. And now that we've segued into the secondary characters who detracted from the movie, let's talk about the fiancé Thomas, played by Colin Lawrence. He was supposed to be the groom. They were getting married in just a couple of weeks. And all of his scenes were just him on a cell phone. So they were just conversations. And very clearly his scenes had been filmed separately. And because I didn't see the previous movie where he and Michelle fell in love, I was not invested in their relationship. So between his bad acting and the constant kind of looking way off the screen from where he should be looking at his fiancée on FaceTime, I totally was prepared for him to have a new woman. I thought he had some girlfriend that was kind of off screen, and by the end of the movie he was going to have broken off the wedding. The wardrobe of the movie. I was so distracted by the bad script, the questionable plot, and the bad acting that I hardly paid any attention to the clothes. So we're just gonna skip that one. Nitpicks, to keep it real. This whole movie is a nitpick, but I will pick out a few for you. The editing and directing on this movie were terrible. I think that's partly why Thomas's scenes on the phone calls didn't work. It can't blame it all on his acting. I think some of it was the editing or the direction. The first scene between Hannah, Michelle, and Carol in the coffee shop, there were all kinds of little inconsistencies. Carol had this towel that she put on her shoulder, and then they'd cut and you'd see suddenly the towel wasn't on her shoulder. Hannah answers the question twice of whether or not she wants a hot cider. Whoever was in charge of continuity that day obviously was out sick. At the end of the movie, where Elliot and Hannah are having a renewed love confession, suddenly it cuts, like in the middle of the scene, to a quick shot of Ezra and his date as they're walking by and giving a little thumbs up. And while sure, it was nice to see that Ezra had a new guy, the timing was horrible. Like, it totally cut away what might have been a nice moment between Hannah and Elliot. The Nestle chocolate chips product plant. I hate it when these product plants are so obvious. I expect some, that's fine. But there is a whole scene where they're all baking in the kitchen and they're baking chocolate chip cookies, and you're seeing that perfect yellow Nestle chocolate chip bag and kind of following it around the kitchen almost, and she's holding them so awkwardly as she pours just so we can still see the logo. Who holds their chocolate chips like this when they're pouring? In real life, we just pour like this. There's another scene where Hannah goes to the Cooper twins' house and they show her this cabinet full of handbells because they had a handbell choir. And the shot is from inside the cabinet, so we see all the handbells and then Hannah's face. And all the handbells are the same size. Like, everyone in the handbell choir plays one note. And then later at the church, when it's suggested, hey, let's have a handbell choir, there's still only two sizes, small bells and big bells. It doesn't work that way. And while we're talking about music, when we hear the choir practicing Jingle Bells, it was brutal. And I don't think it was supposed to be brutal at that point. It just was. As I said, this whole movie was one nitpick after another. I could go on but I won't. Okay, let's talk about what was noteworthy in the movie. Let's talk about my heartstring meter. My heartstring meter is purely my physical reaction to the movie. What heartstrings were plucked in this movie? Did I tear up? Did I get a warm glow? Not a single string was plucked in this movie. My overall rating for this movie is a 1 out of 5. I really wanted to like this movie. I know so many people are big fans of the Christmas and Evergreen movies, but apparently this was not the one to start with. Plus, I wanted to like it because I appreciated that this was the most diverse cast of all the Hallmark movies I've seen so far this season. But it just seemed like this was wedged in to be a bridge between the third movie and the fifth movie. Because there's gonna be a fifth movie. I mean, the wedding didn't happen, and they end the story with one of the characters being pregnant. So you know there's gonna be a fifth. And I'd love to discourage Hallmark from continuing with this train wreck, but I'm sure a fifth one is in store. I won't promise a review though. So what did you think of the movie? Are you a fan of the Christmas and Evergreen series? Did you think this fourth one lived up to the first three? Let me know in the comments below. If you liked the video, I hope you'll give it a thumbs up. Feel free to subscribe, and I will see you at my next review. Bye-bye.